They asked me to reread two that slipped by not the censors, what do you call them? The severe tire damage machines. Editors, not censors. One of them was history in a row. I'm not sure it came over. It should say, to escape from hormones is to talk. To escape from talk is to shut up. Maybe it's not going to make any difference. Maybe we'll get back to it. And the other one was, never mind. How's that? I'll be damned if I'm going to correct myself, edit myself. Here we go. Before we get into tonight, I would like to back up for 1 second for what we were talking about last time. One of the things, the kind of terms that we'd been using of the collective and the herd, and it was a splendid example from life. Give life the credit, not me. I just happen to be there. That you are constantly driving home on the freeway, especially you seeing this in Germany. I like to use the Autobahn, that there you are in your little 59 Bug being passed by the Beamers and the Audis doing 170 miles an hour, talking on the phone. At any rate, the point is, everyone driving home, the example I was using, everyone driving home, and it's perhaps you thought I exaggerated a little bit, but you know it's true after you once listened to it. You're out there on the expressway driving home, bumper to bumper, shoulder to shoulder, toe to ass, and you're driving along at 70 miles an hour, and you know damn well you're surrounded by, because sometimes you've been one of them, people drinking, people tired, people in some kind of altered state of whatever they call consciousness. People fighting, people actually talking on phones, people putting on lipstick, people that you see got a cane with a white tip propped up in the seat next to them. Of course, maybe they're trying to be civil and they can let the dog drive. I don't know. At any rate, there you go. And in one sense, all this, I'm about to get off the subject, I guess, but rather than all the public service announcements and your chips and all your state patrols and all your cities and the Public Service Commission, rather than them wringing their hands talking about, my God, whatever it is, I don't remember what how many people die in traffic wrecks every year? 5,000? 50,000? I forget. Anyway, they wave pictures of bloody wrecks and little babies decapitated and saying, look at this. That's nothing. I mean, that just shows you civilization again. To think only 50,000, isn't that it? Yeah. Okay, I knew it was something. And you can say, well, that sounds horrible. And they can say, that was more than was killed on such and such 2-day period during the 7 Years' War or something. Yeah, anyway, they can wave it and say, look at this, isn't this shocking? And you could sit there if you're disordinary and go, it is. No, you got it backwards. That's a friggin' miracle. All you got to do is have any sense what's going on. 50,000, I mean, all you got to do is think about what you know about people and yourself. And back to my scene, there you are, flying along at 70 miles an hour and surrounded by other, dare I say it, human beings. And you think, Jesus, it's a miracle there's not 50,000 killed a day. Literally. Huh? But notice it's not. And one of the little things I wanted to point out, sort of to the side, but me trying to get you to consider that the collective, and that's just a word, or me call it the herd. I know it can sound to be somewhat pejorative, if not offensive. And I point out that it is a thing. Ordinary consciousness, ordinary thinking does not consider man collectively to be a thing, although they have terminology about it, but it's on a very local level. But the best being the kinds of things of mass hysteria, the mob mentality. That's about the most they'll come up with. They'll point out some series of atrocities that's been committed one religious group on another, one political group or another. And they'll say, well, how could these, whoever they're going to speak about, it doesn't matter, these fine Christian Albanians turn around to these Turkish Muslims and do that when they had such a background of art and history and et cetera. And they say, well, it was some madman jumped up in the middle of them, and it was like just over a period of time, it was some kind of mass hysteria. Life constantly says that. History constantly says that. But other than that, it's just a footnote, and it's forgotten. They treat it as an aberration. It's an anomaly that that's not the way people are. Contrary, that's the same relationship I'm saying. The society, that is a collective itself, waving pictures and moaning over 50,000 people being killed. In a sense, I get it backwards. Rather than wringing your hands, you should be going, Jesus, I can't believe our luck. All right? Rather than history pointing out when groups of people, not individual, but when a group of people seem to almost take on a life of its own, rather than them saying, look what they did that was terrible, because it's never done in a positive sense. They never pick out anything collectively and say, well, look what these people, they almost collectively took on some kind of life, and look at the great work they did, which I'm getting off to the third stage. Consider that. Why is that never done? Rather than the obvious, that never happens. Back to the main room. Back to the main part. I just want you to understand, all the ideas, the way I was putting it, of some sort of collective thinking, collective intelligence, the herd, and me then pointing out that it actually has a life. And we saw around time last time, that you can feel it. It's not mystical, it's not occult, it's not weird, it's not New Age. You simply look out there and see these hundreds or perhaps thousands of cars, if you're in the right altitude on the highway, and you look out there, and there, you and them are flying along just this far apart with a whole spectrum of humanity, all the way from drunks to the near blind and everything you can think of. And there you go, and there's only a few amount of wrecks that goes. And you look out there, and it's no longer, it's not fiction, it's not allegory, it's not a metaphor, it's not symbolic, it's a fact. And that's just, I'm just picking out one local thing, but you can look out there, and if we could put a name on it, spatially, let me say, I'm picking out the number of cars that you could see, that you feel like, well, I know there are more cars down the highway. I know it stretches all the way from here down to San Diego. I know that. But to me, reality right now is the number of cars I can see. All right, let's call that something. That something is alive. And it's not mass hysteria, and it's not the individuals involved. That's where the mind really breaks down. Because you can say, well, in some way humans, no. That thing is alive. It is not metaphorical. And what it's doing, the specific I want to get to, is this thing that I'm pointing out that surely you can see now, that in a quite real sense it is a miracle that less, or that not more than 50,000 people are killed. It's a miracle that you get home every day under those conditions, except for this. It is not a temporary anomaly. It is not any sort of mass hysteria. It is not allegory. That thing is alive, and not this. Life is alive, and what it's doing is looking after its own safety. The fact that you get home every day is just kind of an innocent, meaningless byproduct. I will assume, but I'll say it anyway, having not even a tinge of any sarcasm, cynicism, it's not to say, oh, we're just insignificant. Well, even if it were, you should still think, hey, very fortunate insignificance that I happen to stumble into. See, because, and then humans, the mind knows this, the mind's aware, the same way that in a sense fish are aware of water. They just can't talk about it, and they wouldn't know what to make of it if they could. The best they could do is start looking at the immediate, environment the same way as humans do. They could never conceive of the ocean. They certainly couldn't conceive of the oceans being tied to the weather, to the clouds, the atmosphere above it. Just all they could do, if they did become conscious and could talk, all they could do is start making comments on the immediate environment, the seashells, other fish they run into. In the same way, humans fall into, as they've got no other choice, but the mind ordinarily falls into these great runways, sinkholes of religion, all kinds of forces outside the system to explain how is it, and then you got your choice, the roads always diverge, how is it that we can explain how blank or how blank I am? That is, how unfortunate I am or how fortunate I am. Just according to what you had to eat. You're driving home and somebody almost hits you on the expressway. Or maybe somebody does scratch your fender. Or you look over and it's another wreck. You're not in, and you see a body laying there bleeding. And maybe a guy standing there with a bottle in his hand, the police, about to frisk him, cuff him. And you think something like, my God, life, it just sucks. How can we live like this? What kind of animals are we? That's one choice. Or the other one, There's no wreck. You just got a raise. You got a hot date tonight. And for no reason, your nervous system just feels in sync and you're driving along. And then your thing is, how could I have been so fortunate to be alive? Of course, it's just a passing fancy. But in either case, see, if humans then try and become philosophical and reflective at all, they have to start moving their mind outside the system as to why they're that way. How blessed I am by the gods to be here, and my car is working. I got a new car. Maybe you just found out the bank credited you with 2 monthly payments by accident. You might get by with it. You know how it is. You're suddenly driving. I just had to make up examples of a hot date and all that. Just no reason. You're just driving along, and you start smiling at other cars going by. And just everything is just hunky-dory. Or for no other reason, be the same person, same situation 5 minutes later, and you have severe, almost terminal red ass, thinking, God damn, screw life. If I had the nerve, if I was a better shot, I'd kill myself. But in either case, if we jumped inside your car, that person in their ear, and say, well, what brought this on? What's the meaning of this? They say, well, I don't know the meaning. It's just, it's the nature of life, that the gods and fortune either smiles upon you or it doesn't. If you look out, you see. We're still using an example up there on the expressway. You look out and see, there is nowhere else to look once you see it. You don't have to look up in the stars. You don't have to imagine, is God actually an old man painted on black velvet somewhere that resembles Elvis in his better days? You look out there, and there it is. It's alive. And any curse, any blessing you have, and the curse part is just child's play. The point of you getting home every day in safety is truly, it's an innocent, meaningless byproduct of the fact that life got home safely. And if that gets too broad, I know it does. I mean, no offense to your brain, but words just fall apart. Take just the area where you are in the traffic. That's what I keep doing this for. There's no name for it. It seems to be your local environment, not just physically, but the environment of which you can be somewhat capable of consciousness, or consciousness thereof, I should say, for you English students. So that's what I mean. This thing gets home every day. Of course, life gets home. But to keep it at some level that almost is verbally manageable, this environment of you and this number of X cars, 500 cars, whatever it is, it's you and this number of cars almost, you feel like that is almost your territory. If you could neurally piss out and mark your territory on the expressway every day from, that you drive most of the same times, let's say. You're going home and you get in your car and you leave the parking lot and you hit the freeway at, let's say, 5:15, and normally you can count on it's 30 minutes from 5:15 to 5:45, you're off the freeway and almost home. You're pulling over. So for that 30 minutes, whatever your feel is, it doesn't matter, but your feel of the environment, the immediate environment of you and this number of cars, is what I mean by that. It's alive. It gets home safely. That's why it's getting home safely. The point that you get home safely, back to where we started, I'm not denying it. From one view you look at, and it's a miracle. Forget the 50,000 that are killed. You should think it is a miracle that any of us get home. We should all be dead, knowing what I know about humans and just glancing around, just seeing what's going on in other cars and the way people are driving. Something is terribly ordinary about your nervous system if you cannot get out now. And of course, you can do it walking. You can be on a busy sidewalk with people. People don't bump into each other that much. If they do, that's an anomaly. It's like one of the 50,000 that got killed. And you glance out, look off of a patio or the plaza, downtown Manhattan, or any big city, and people like this, like ants. And if somebody does bump into each other, that's the exception. And you can look down, and you could try to make something metaphysical out of it. Like, well, humans some way can see with their bodies. They can see behind themselves. They can see sideways without bumping into each other. And I see people looking off and they're distracted and they can walk and they still don't bump into each other. Same thing as the cars. Because once you see it, the people are alive, there's no doubt. But the people are not the point. You look down there and the group of people that you see there running down 42nd Street as fast as they can, that's what's alive. It's life looking after its safety. The point that you got home all right, the point you didn't get hurt, hey, it's an innocent byproduct. But that was not the point. the mind will not think in such ways. It has to make, the best it can do is make it local, and that's why it comes up with strange ideas from what I've been calling the herd or collective intelligence. Much longer than any of us have been on this planet, people have been trying all the way from the Greeks in the Western world to some latest psychiatrist or philosopher, somebody now is still trying to talk about it. They always have. But it's always on the basis of whatever they're observing or trying to describe is an exception. Such as, I felt like that you guys didn't get the point. I thought that'd be the easiest. If it's described as being some sort of mass hysteria, that this group of people got all liquored up and they lynched a guy that'd been arrested for, charged with killing a kid, with some little child, and the people got all liquored up and got mad and went out there and hung the guy, and it turned out he wasn't even in town that time. And the next day, in the cold light, when it was proven, obviously, that it couldn't have been him, and there's these decent people, and their hangover is beginning to wane just a little bit, and the harsh glare of the morning sun. Oh. And then is when humans, ordinary minds, want to point out something along the lines that there is a kind of force sometimes that goes on psychologically. I'm using the kind of terms they would use, that seems to be greater than the individuals. Because if the observer that was in my situation that I just made up, he can say, the 30 people that hung that innocent man last night, that went out, and I know every one of them. There's not one of them that is not a decent middle class, if not more so, in our community. Lawyers, doctors, bankers. I mean, you know them all. Something happened. And then they try to explain, well, the quirks of human psychology and the little kid, it was such a brutal murder, and it seemed at the time they had to blame somebody, and then the booze, but then they still say those individuals weren't responsible. They weren't acting responsibly, because we all know the people, and they're decent people. It's as though, God, I don't know, it's almost as though some kind of herd-like instinct, some kind of mass insanity, that lynch mob mentality took over. Except for this. All they saw was a local phenomenon, and in what seems to be to them its worst light. That's not an exception. That's life. And I don't mean that situation. Life is alive. In the human mind, you can say that, and the sentence, I guess, rhetorically, even to the simplest of minds, would make some sense. They go, well, yeah, I guess you're trying to talk some kind of highfalutin talk, or life is alive, because everything that happens to humans, everything that happens to its internal components, is almost an innocent byproduct. Do you understand? I keep well, I shouldn't with you guys. It's not to make it sound like, well, poor old us, that we're of no significance and we're just little pimples on the ass of the universe. It's not that. We're important, we wouldn't be part of the universe. But everything that the ordinary mind cannot explain, be it pro, con, up or down, such as, isn't it a miracle that I got through last night without helping that mob lynch that guy? Or conversely, some of them that did participate go, my God, what came over me? How could I have done that? It's the same thing. It's pulling off after 30 minutes. Again, it's a Friday, and you pull off the Ventura Freeway, pull over toward your house, you're almost home, and you look back down, and you see, still, as far as I can see, all these cars still, of course I'm being charitable, I guess, to some of the LA or California freeway. Anyway, they're all doing 70 miles an hour, and you look down and you go, Friday, I don't have to do it again. It's a miracle I got home. Like, I can't believe how lucky I am. That was an accident. That was just an innocent byproduct. Life got home all right. The reason you got home all right is you were riding with life. But the reason that people don't kill themselves more is not for the sake of people, it's for the sake of life. It's the one that wants to get home all right. And so if you got home all right, it was just because you were riding with life. You were in the wake of life. You were in the close proximity with life. Of course, that's ordinary people, and they'd want to jump up and go, aha, I knew it. You'd finally get around to talking about God and religion and cosmic forces. Now, before your very eyes, we will analyze, a dozen news items in 5 minutes. Count them 5. Or count them a dozen. Of course, I could cheat and do it these ways. Just look at the ones they handed me and go, and then turn the page over, right? Because you guys are catching on to that. It was Captain Somebody. Jumped down, suddenly appeared on the terrace and all that, and brushed the crumbs from his cape and all that. And he states to the people, going crazy is no job for amateurs. And a viewer was down there thrown from his chair when he heard this, and he thought, my God, could it come to this that the only difference, of course he's referring to the kind of stuff we've been talking about, our kind of terms, the viewer says, could it come down that the only difference between an independent thinker and the insane is that one of them is a professional at what he does? All right, here's my analyzation. Could that not actually be the only difference? I offer that as my analyzation, but when it was read earlier, the sounds that I heard in this room tell me that many of you immediately analyzed it in a not dissimilar fashion yourself. So, at least you have another vote in your column. From the archives, the deep archives, evidently, of human history, was this item. Man's first murder weapon was boredom. As always, we could take, or you could take your own quick view that they could be hormonal boredom, and there could be otherwise, neural boredom. Hormonal boredom, most people will take care of, one way or the other. If it's really desperate and you're a lard ass and lazy, you go to sleep. If it's real bad, and you're the other direction, you'll get up and go for a run. You'll go out and cut the grass again. And if you're somewhere in between, you might just think, well, I don't want to cut the grass, or I've already cut it. I don't know what to do. That sort of thing. Neurally, what do you do though? How do you fidget neurally? Which would be another story, but how do you fidget neurally? And the answer, you do not have to look very far, my friends, not even to the wind or anybody named Zimmerman. All you got to do is hold a mirror somewhere in the close proximity of your head. But consider the first murder weapon was boredom. But then consider that same murder weapon has now become a part and parcel, inseparable, that you could get up and dance your own dance with a binary questions about cause and effect or effect and cause of entertainment in the neural sense of all kinds. Put entertainment dash boredom, or for those of you like the other way, boredom dash entertainment. For those of you who really don't get fancy, boredom slash entertainment or entertainment slash boredom. And then, if you survive all that, think, murder weapon, eh? Huh? They're not to take away anybody's fun and enjoyment if you get any, but can you not see that much of what ordinarily passes for entertainment, and it's not anybody's fault out there, it's not some kind of conspiracy of NBC or the movie networks or the movie studios, the networks everywhere, that what seems to be entertainment is a form of murder. Well, that is to keep you from being so itchy. That God, boy, it's nuts being alive. That is, it's nuts that I can't make my ordinary people don't analyze it this way, of course, but I can't make my mind, go any further. I can't see them do anything. Geez, I'll go to a movie. I turn on TV. That's the neural, hormonal. Like I said, you get up and run, try to find somebody to go get laid, go eat maybe. But neurally, what do you do? And it's not any attack on entertainment, but you understand that part of entertainment is like a weapon. Now, I'm being harsh with it, say to kill you and to kill the potential through boredom, but it's to keep people almost sane. Ordinary people. They don't know what it is, but they keep wanting to scratch. And I've been describing to you what they're trying to do is they're yearning for tomorrow, mentally. And then they try to feed it through, well, maybe when I die, the gods will be good to me. And it goes into all sorts of stories, but what they want is for the human nervous system to develop even further in them in their lifetime, and under ordinary conditions, sad to say, but it won't. You'll get home all right, but you won't get home with the same brain if you're ordinary. And so in a sense, that's what entertainment, although I made it sound pejorative to start with in the news item, but it's a form of, if you don't like murder, I can ease off a little bit, it's a form of assault down near manslaughter on boredom / potential. Because that's what a man's boredom is the potential that he could think more. And then he goes, well, I can't seem to do it. And then he feels irritated. And then he says, well, shit, I'll go to a movie. There you are. Of course, you like cheaper entertainment, I guess you go to church. Well, I don't know what they charge nowadays. So. I could be wrong. We out? You got a tape still rolling. The simpler the cow, the more complex its conception of the herd. The simpler the cow. Imagine a nice, simple, everyday, dressed up cow driving his car down the Ventura Freeway, and he looks out at the herd. In this case, the cars, him going home, and he thinks, what a complicated, what a incomprehensible. If you tried to get the cow to wax in the privacy of his car, just you and him, philosophically or philosophical, like, isn't it amazing that you get home every day? And the cow would think, yes, the complexity of bovine life itself, the complexity of life, of us getting home, me having a job, me getting the check every week, getting lost, just the whole thing, life, I mean, it's beyond comprehension. Thank God we have religion or philosophy, most people, religion, some way to explain this away. You may explain this away? Well, hell no, but don't bother me. It's their job to. They should. The simpler the cow, the more complex its conception of the herd. Other than cow, you can, of course, say the mind. The simpler a person's mind, the more complex things seem. Which, once you see that, accounts for the historical honor, grandeur, and popularity in which activity such as this is held. Do you see a connection? And simple people go, held where? I don't see anything. Who knows better the minds of sheep than the working dogs riding their backs? I couldn't resist. I don't know whether all you got that, but a lot of sheepdogs and the way that they handle, especially, well, the way many of them handle all over different areas of the world, it seems to be genetic. Seems to be. That when they are really trying to control the physical movements of sheep, that they will actually jump up on their back. But think about the different view. Did everybody go? That's the same news item. Does that help? Okay. No man is sick enough of a thing to stop it if he's not sick enough of it to quit talking about it. Is another prime example, as though we needed one, that's speaking in absolute, which is reasonable, binary-based words. Do you need me to stop or not? I was going to say diametrically opposed, just to make the point. This is exactly the opposite from any reasonable man's view. Am I right or am I wrong? You be right. When you write your own material, you always be right. Ordinary people say and do what? They operate on the assumption, the basis. They can prove it. They point and they're right. That one of the things about being sick of something, well, a bad habit, smoking, drinking, eating too much, I don't care what. One of the things is to talk about it. Not just with others, but perhaps yourself. There are whole courses and things about every time you pull out a cigarette, every time you go to reach for a bottle, is talk to yourself. Tell yourself, well, you remember your uncle died of drinking. Do you remember what the doctor said? Try to remember the words of the doctor last week again said, 6 more months of drinking like this and you will be a dead man. 6 more months. That's the easy way. What would seem to be the most agreeable, the most efficient way, they say, amongst a dead man. 6 more months. That's the easy way. What would seem to be the most agreeable, the most efficient way, they say, amongst cows, amongst the herd, amongst the collective ordinary people, is to do it overtly. As much as you do, I am sick of drinking. But I know enough about the physiology of man that even what a form of poison. Your body becomes acclimated to it, and I've been drinking like this daily for 60 years, and I just can't up and stop. I agree with you. I look at it and I think, screw Jack Daniels and Lem Motlow, and George Dickel. I hate them. I just can't stop. That seems to be on the right track, does it not? To talk about it. I mean, how are you going to stop a bad habit? How are you going to even come to grips with it? If you don't have some feeling about it. And if you got some feeling about it in your ordinary, you're going to do what? You're going to talk about it. Back to the no man is sick enough of a thing to stop it if he's not sick enough of it to quit talking about it. You understand that from a verbal view, and I point this out for a purpose, not to build up some kind of imaginary hero of a guy that wouldn't say anything. But this is just the opposite from collective intelligence. That they would say, no, that's got nothing to do with it. That's nutsy. It's not efficient. Hardly anybody could do that. But if people tried it, it would be self-defeating. Because part of the thing is to tell people, I want to quit eating so much. I want to quit drinking. And your friends say, well, there, I know you do. We'll help you. Call us when you want to have a drink. You going to come over and help? No, we're going to come over and tell you not to. That's an old joke. I don't think it's making the rounds at AA meetings, but you mean if I call you up, you'll come over and talk me out of it? Well, hell no, we'll come over and join you. Well, we don't have time for this kind of cheap humor. It wasn't all that cheap. I paid a guy $10. Well, now, would you jump right quick from actual hormonal, physical, bad habits of drinking, that kind of stuff, to something else? Surprise, surprise. I'll read now that I pointed to the brain. Forget the habits. If drinking and smoking don't kill you, Jesus, something worse will. You mean you can die a worse death than death? No man is sick enough of a thing to stop it if he's not sick enough of it to quit talking about it. Repeating the same thing over and over. Living the same neural life over and over. Now, take it. No man is sick enough of a thing to stop it if he's not sick enough of it to quit talking about it. Do you see the trick? Because anything you're sick of neurally, if you quit talking about it, hey, voila. I hate to point out, you have cured it. And all ordinary minds go, no, hey, you're not going to put that kind of shit on me. Nah. And of course, why they do that is something in their system goes, I'll be goddamn, that'd work. Well, in a strange way, of course. Now I repeat, the real problems of a civilized man are up here. I mean, if you got lung cancer or a tumor or something, we're not saying that that's not being sick. But the sickness of being civilized, that which people will point out as being the singular, the most acute pain, is here. They may call it emotional or spiritual, but it's here. It's not physical. It's something other than physical. That is the pain unique to man. It's in the mind. I don't mean that you're a hypochondriac. But it's mental disturbance, which proves you're alive. So now, no man is sick enough of a thing to stop it unless he is sick enough to quit talking about it. The talking about it is, in the sense, what makes people sick. And so for a person to say, I know this gets, I guess we can say if you're running yourself on an ordinary merry-go-round, circular, but it's not. If you're making yourself sick, it's because you thought the same thing more than once. Because the most despicable thing you could think of, like, well, I wanted to kill my mother once. All right, if you thought that once, would you trust me this far? Do it yourself. You can rely on it. I should keep saying that. If you only thought it once, that's it. It would not be a problem. That's more trickery and deceit. I sure did have high hopes for that. Pick out from an ordinary view. We're not singling out some aspect of clinical neuroses, But pick out what would seem to be the worst thing that you personally have ever thought, or that you think the other people's ever thought. You know, such as I wanted to kill my mother. I think about it all the time. I don't know why. I have pictures of it, and I need to go into analysis. In fact, I think that's why I drink. I felt so guilty about that. And now she's dead, and I can't do anything about it. All right, let's just assume. I'm just picking that out. Or one time I cursed God. Pick out one thing that you consider just despicable. The worst thing you could do. If you didn't think it more than once, it would not be a problem. You still missed it. If you didn't think it more than once, you wouldn't know you ever did it. You got to think it twice. You got to remember it. It's only then that can become a problem. Think the worst thing you ever can, think it once, but don't ever think it again. You can rely on this. You will feel no remorse, no guilt. It will have no ramifications, no after effects. Just don't ever think it a second time. Back to the news item. If a man's not sick enough of something, a man's not sick enough of something to stop it if he's not sick enough of it to quit thinking about it. There's the cure. Put it to you another way. The total, complete, personal eradication of the past. How much of the past? What? Are you talking about like back up 30 years or last week or like last second? Oh, I'm sorry, did you say something?